morning. We had a little bit of a disconnect in the beginning of the service today. Usually David is the glue that keeps our service together. And whenever he's gone, all of you know that things are kind of disjointed some. I want to reread the scripture. Wade and I are going to need to compare Bibles at the end of the service today and see, because my Revelation 3:14 says something different. The church that he was reading about was a cold church. And we can discuss that another time. But let me read you the church about, because the message this morning is on deception and the church at, ready? Laodicea. Now, I broke tradition and actually wrote my sermon today and read it to Patty, which I've never done before. And at the end, she said, do you know that you said Laodicea 5 different ways in that? And I told her I was just trying to make reference to the different dialects. Some people call it Waco, some people call it Wacko. You know, so throughout here, I think I've got this in 20, 25 times, but the correct pronunciation is Laodicea. So we'll see if I can say it that way each and every time. But here's the scripture, 14. Write to the angel of the church in Laodicea, the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the originator of God's creation, says, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I'm rich, I have become wealthy and need nothing. And you don't know that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Now there's so many interesting things in that. This is one of the, I believe it's the only place that Jesus actually refers to himself as the Amen. And we're going to talk about this church, the church at Laodicea. And first I want to share with you one of my favorite verses in the Bible. And it's in John chapter 14. And Jesus he's finished his public ministry. He's giving his departing words to his disciples. And he says to them in chapter 14, verse 1, your heart must not be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If not, I would have told you. I am going away to prepare a place for you. If I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. You know the way to where I am going. And Thomas says, Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? And then now here's it. Here's the verse. Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that is such a powerful statement, because Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, the life. He didn't say I am a way. I am a truth, if there could be a truth, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or a life. He said that he was the way, the truth, the life. And then to emphasize what he said, he added, no one comes to the Father except through me. Now, I've always been fascinated with the concept of truth. And we've talked about it many times in my Sunday school class. I love the concept of truth because simply there can only be one truth. There can't be two truths. There can only be one truth. And I use kind of a silly analogy of this in that math is such an exact science. 2 and 2 is 4. Now that's the truth. And that's the only truth. And there's many deceptions, and there's many other. 2 plus 1 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 5. 2 plus 2 is 7. All of those are wrong, aren't they? And if your entire life You were told that 2 plus 2 was 5, and that's what you believed, and that's what was written on your dining room wall, and your father preached it to you, and your mother preached it to you, and your friends reinforced it, and your whole life you heard 2 plus 2 is 5. That doesn't make it true, does it? That may be your perception, but it doesn't make it true. Well, what's so dangerous about that? And the danger in that is that you have lived your whole life not knowing that 2 plus 2 is 4. And that's the problem with deception, is whenever you're deceived and you believe one thing, no matter how strongly you believe it, and it's not the truth, you've missed out on the truth. A couple of years ago, there was a church here in San Antonio that had a promotion, and they put out these bumper stickers that said, God said it, I believe it, and that's it. And I thought that was a good direction, but you can take out the I believe it. God said it, and that's it. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. God said it. And God says, Jesus says, that I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And the whole world is out there telling us different ways. Universalism, that everybody goes. Rubbing Buddha's belly, and they go too. I mean, there's a whole world out there that's telling people that 2 plus 2 is 5 and 2 plus 2 is 7. And they believe it, and they build churches around it, and they make signs and bumper stickers, and they have fellowships, and they're close, and they love each other. But they've missed that 2 plus 2 is 4. That Jesus is the truth. That Jesus is the only way. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that's, throughout the Bible, it warns us of deception. In fact, there's so much in the Bible warning us of deception. Luke 21:8, Jesus warned his disciples, take heed that you not be deceived. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. 2 Corinthians 11:3, but I fear, lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is Christ. Now, I love that verse, and I would love to do a sermon someday on the simplicity of Christ. Because people miss all that Jesus is because it just seems too simple. There's got to be something more to it. There's got to be something I've got to add to it. There's got to be something. It can't be that simple. Well, it is that simple. And I would like someday to discuss that. But people miss, and they get corrupted because they just can't accept the simplicity of it. And deception is a problem that will continue to plague us in this world. 2 Timothy 3:13, but evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. And that's just a mere sampling of the places in the Bible that talk about deception. There's, and then in John chapter 8, and I love John. We kidded about that in Sunday school. Any book we're studying is my favorite, but John has got to be my favorite. You know, there's so much in John chapter 8. Jesus says, as he was saying these things, many believed in him. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you continue in my word, you really are my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Jesus is the truth. And I love this, that the truth will set you free. Once you know the truth, you don't have to go looking and seeking for it anymore, do you? I know the truth. I know that 2 plus 2 is 4. I don't need to worry about it anymore. I don't need to go searching for it. I don't need to try to figure it out myself. I don't need to ask people about it. I don't need to look it up on Google. I know the truth. And Jesus says right here, you know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And who's the truth? Jesus is the truth. Deception is dangerous. And like I've said, the biggest problem with deception is that it keeps you from knowing the truth. When you believe a lie,
It keeps you from knowing the truth. And when we make decisions and take directions in our life, give counsel in our life, take counsel in our life, and we base it upon something that's not true, how can that be a good decision? I'm going to give you one personal example, and I hesitate to throw on this in because it's about one of my children, but it's not about my child sitting here, my perfect daughter. It's about my imperfect son in Seattle. But when he was 1972, that would make him how old? He was first grade, 6, 7 years old. Well, we lived in Greenville, Texas, small town. It was back in the days when you actually could leave your doors open, you know, when you went to work, and we did. We had a milkman who used to bring milk and ice cream. I keep thinking about that. Why don't we have somebody that can bring ice cream nowadays to our house? I don't know. Thank goodness for Paggy and CVS. You know? But anyway, I'm the retail advertising manager of the Greenville Herald Banner, and I get a call. I knew everybody in town. It's a small town, and I was the advertising department there. And I get a call saying, your son is here in my business. It was after school, and he's lost. And I'm thinking, he's supposed to be riding the bus home. You know, what's going on? So I immediately went down there to get Christopher. And Christopher said, I said, what happened? What are you doing here? Well, Dad, I got on the bus and I realized I was on the wrong bus. And so I told the bus driver I was on the wrong bus, and he just pulled over and told me to get out. And boy, I was angry. Now, up until this point, as far as I know, my son never lied to me, so it didn't even come into my mind. I got home, I called the bus people. I got the bus driver's name. I got the school principal's name. We got the superintendent of the schools. The next morning at 7 a.m., I was at that school. And I mean, I was ready to just, I was young and ill-tempered. But I was ready to just tear some, what would be a term we could use in church? I was ready to really talk to them people. Then, come to find out, what my son had done is instead of going and getting on the bus, he decided he was going to walk to the newspaper because he knew the way. Well, when he got lost, he at least had the good sense to go into a store and tell somebody he was lost. So I did all of this. I made all these decisions. I made all of these plans. I was prepared to do all, and it was all based on a lie. And I've used that story with each of my kids growing up. That when you've got a problem, when you're in a situation and you come to me for advice and you need my help, tell me the truth. Because I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to take an action. And if I make that decision and take that action based upon what's not true, how can my decision be good and my action be good? And I think about that story because we've got a whole world out there of people that are making decisions, taking actions, thinking that they're good, that they're ready, that they're saved, that they're going to be in heaven. And Jesus says, no one comes to the Father except through me. One way, one man, one life, one truth. And there's a whole world out there that needs to know that. Now we come to the church in Laodicea. This church is one of the more interesting of the 7 churches that John wrote his letter. Because if deception is bad, self-deception is even worse. Have you ever known anybody that would come up to you and say, I am so self-deceived? No, you're totally unaware when you're self-deceived. The people at the church at Laodicea, is that the same way? Were totally deceived. And that they thought they were going in the right direction. They thought they were doing the right things. The city was thriving. By the time the Romans took over the city, it was known for a flourishing bank industry. It had a textile and wool industry that was a cash cow and second to none. They also had a medical school there that had developed an ear and eye ointment that was used throughout Asia Minor. I mean, this was a city that was thriving. They had money. They had nice clothes. They produced eye medicine. And that's why it's so ironic that Jesus called them poor, naked, and blind. in the book of Revelation. In fact, of the 7 churches that the Apostle John talked about, the church at Laodicea is the only church that Jesus had nothing positive to say about. He tells them, I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Now the whole concept of lukewarm is fascinating. I get fascinated by all kinds of things. But lukewarm is always fascinating. When I was little, somewhere in this range, hard to believe I was ever that little, but it used to just drive me mad. My mother would sit down at the kitchen table with a hot cup of coffee, and if she left it sitting there too long, it would turn cold. I would sit down with a cold Coke, and if I left it sitting there too long, it would turn hot. And I'm thinking, I just don't get it. You know, why doesn't her coffee turn hot and my Coke turn cold? Of course, we know that what was happening is they were both hot, cold, reaching a middle point that we call lukewarm. And there's an analogy there to the world that left to its own, the world becomes lukewarm, doesn't it? But the interesting part, and I got 2 other city names here that we will see if I can get through it. The reason why this was such a good analogy about the hot and cold to the people at Laodicea is the fact that their neighbors in Hierapolis, they had built an empire around the precious resource that they had, which was a hot spring. So 15 miles to the north was this area that had hot springs. 10 miles to the east was Colasa. And it was known for its fresh cold water springs that bubbled up around there. And so by the time the aqueduct system water got to Laodicea, it wasn't hot from the springs from Hierapolis, nor was it cold from the springs from Colasa, but it was lukewarm. And historians say, and this is historians outside of biblical writings, historians say that the water at Laodicea, that it was tepid and nasty tasting. And I find it so fascinating that then that's the analogy that Jesus uses to the people there that were so self-deceived. They had, their evaluation of themselves was radically different from what Jesus' evaluation was. Their self-assessment went like, I am rich, have become wealthy, and have need of nothing. And they felt that the fact of their blessings came from their leading a righteous life. We have this prosperity. We must be leading a righteous life. But Jesus told them, you do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. They believed their own lies. Can you imagine a more spiritually dangerous position to be in than to think that you're okay, to think that you're saved, to live your life around a deception, to live your life around a lie, and then find out too late that there is only one truth and only one way. And it should be a message to us in the churches today that we need to do as Scripture calls us, we need to be as Scripture calls us to be, and we need to do what Scripture calls us to do. And we need to be able to take criticism, not only from within our church, from outside the church too. You know, the best criticism you'll ever get is from somebody that doesn't like you, right? Because he's not worried about hurting your feelings. And we need to be able to take that criticism. I looked at this, I said our prayer should be like David's in Psalms 139, 23 through 24. We all know that prayer. David said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." But you know, it doesn't have to be a wicked way. It can just be a wrong way. It can be a non-productive way. It can be, "I'm going to wait" way. It doesn't just have to be a wicked way. But any of those will keep us from carrying out the job that we need to do here. The churches today need to preach the message of John. They need to preach that Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, and that no one comes to the Father except through him. And there's a world out there, a whole world out there that doesn't know that truth. In our Sunday school lesson today, we were at the part, when you get into John 12, where Jesus has completed his public ministry. And he's passed the baton, so to speak, on to his disciples. The disciples need to spread the word. He spent this time, he spent 3.5 years teaching them, but he spent the last couple of days really emphasizing to them the fact that he is the truth. There are so many "I am" in John, the last week of Jesus' life, that he's pounding into the disciples, that they need to pass this message on. The disciples then passed that message on and passed the baton to who? To the church, to us. And that's where we need to be as a church. And I'm not saying this as an indictment to our church here, but all the churches, that we are not preaching, that we're letting Jesus intended, see if I can say this right, Jesus intended his church to be countercultural. He intended his church to change the world, not to be changed by the world. And the church over the years, especially here in the United States, especially here within the last, I would say, just 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years, we have let the world change the church. There are so many things that preachers are afraid to say from the pulpit, lest they may offend. And as churches, we need to get back to preaching that simple message. You know, the message of Christ crucified. And the crucifixion affirmed what he had said. And that's his parting word to his disciples were, "I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me." And that's the message that I would like our church to get out. That's the message that the world needs to hear. And we don't need to worry about being politically correct and talk about the other peaceful religions and welcome them to and have this big, and I never say the word right, ecumenical. How do you say it, Noise? Ecumenical. Do it right?
Close enough.
Let me go back to AOSC. But let's have this big gathering. Let's bring in all these churches, and we all worship, and we all believe. And as long as you believe, I grew up a universalist. I don't care what you believe, Ronnie. If you believe it wholeheartedly in your heart, oh, I didn't like that. Then you're okay. Jesus didn't say that. He didn't say, "I'm a way for you Christians. You Buddhists, you got a different path." No, that's not what he said. He said, "No one comes to the Father except through me." And that should be our message to the world. That should be our message to this community. That should be the message that we carry in our heart, that we carry in our workplace. I think the time for being politically correct and having this big ecumenical, back up close, ecumenical hug is over. So in a minute, David, we're going to close the service with, which I think is very apropos. Hymn number, page 303, Just As I Am. Because what Jesus is asking you now, what Jesus is asking of you now is to accept Him. That He's the way, the truth, and the life. And that no one comes to the Father except through Him. So if you want to come to the Father, if you want to be a part of Christianity, if you want to be a part of eternal life, and you haven't ever accepted Him, now is the moment that you can. And He's not asking anything of you. He's not asking you to do anything. He's not really asking you to say anything. He's just asking you to accept Him. The simplicity of Christ. So it's David and Sherry, and as we always forget how we do this at the end. We stand. We stand and we sing 303, Just As I Am. Because that's what He wants from you right now, is just as you are, to accept Him just as He is. This morning. If you haven't got enough, tonight we're going to talk about the marriage covenant. Not the marriage certificate, the marriage agreement. We're going to talk about the marriage covenant. And it is a covenant. And there's very specific things about that. So, if you're married, been married, want to get married, know somebody who's been married. If you fit in any of those categories, come back this evening. Larry, would you like to close us in a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the words Charles